Hello, hello, it's Mrs. Tremblay yet again. It is time for lesson 4.2, and this time it's still about percents, but it's about percent of increase and decrease, also known as the percent of change, because it's changing by going up or it's changing by going down. And just to kind of relate this to a real world example, I am sure you've had a bottle of water at some point in time, and a lot of these companies now are trying to use less plastic. So next time you have a bottle of water, or even you might notice it on a bottle of shampoo or laundry detergent. I don't know, I'm trying to get my kids to help with laundry. Maybe you do too. But on these containers, it'll say uses 30% less plastic, or you get 20% more in this bottle. Things like that. That is a percent of change. It's a percent of change from whatever the original amount was. So the way that the companies calculate this, they use the exact same formula you're going to learn about. So maybe you're going to be some corporate executive and trying to do some great marketing strategies. You might use this. Wouldn't that be amazing? It all comes back to 7th grade math. All right, I'll quit babbling. Percent of change is the percent that a quantity changes from the original amount. It can be calculated by this. So you're going to be given two amounts. Neither of them is going to be a percent because that's what you're calculating, the percent of change. You're going to take the higher amount and subtract the lower amount from it. After you do that, you divide by whatever amount you started with. So it doesn't have to be the higher one, it doesn't have to be the lower one, it's whatever one comes first. And remember, we're changing this into a percent, right? We're trying to calculate a percent. And when you're trying to get a percent out of an equation, you have to multiply by 100 at the end. So right here, this is our key formula for today. This one formula works for both percent increase and percent decrease. So how can you tell what's what? It's not too tricky. If the starting amount is lower than the ending amount, it's a percent increase because what you started with is less, so it's going up. If the starting amount is higher, then it's a percent decrease because whatever you started with, you're taking away. I know, crazy. Okay, let's try a few. It says, find the percent of change for each. Identify whether it is a percent increase or a percent decrease. So first off, it says we're going from, let's say last year we had 10 inches of rain and this year we had 25 inches of rain. And I want you to find the percent of change. First off, I'm going from a lower amount to a higher amount. So that would end up being an increase. So I'm just going to write ink up here for increase so we know that it's an increase. And here's how you use the formula. The formula says take the higher amount minus the lower amount. So 25 is higher. And we want to subtract 10 from that. We're supposed to divide that by the starting amount. So in this, 10 inches is what we started with. It's the first amount given. That was the first piece of data. You would divide that by 10, and at the end, you're going to multiply that by 100. All I did was replace the numbers given into this formula here. So when you're solving something like this, you do have to use order of operations. And when something's written as a fraction, it means you need to solve the numerator and denominator separately before you divide and then multiply. So we would first do 25 minus 10, which is 15. And then we can take 15 divided by 10 and multiply that by 100. And if you're using a calculator, you can actually do all that in one stream because it will divide before it multiplies because it's happening from left to right. So you can take 15 divided by 10, or you can say 15 divided by 10 is 1.5. And 1.5 times 100, yes, it's 150. Now because we just multiplied this by 100, that means 150%. So this is 150% increase, which kind of makes sense because if you start with 10, because you might be thinking, well, I thought something couldn't be more than 100%. If I increase 10 by 100%, that means another 10, wouldn't that be 20? And 25 is greater than that. So yeah, we have increased 10 by more than 100%. All right, look at this next one. Let's say that you work for a company and you used to get 12 sick days a year, and they were trying to save money. A lot of companies are right now, and they reduced that to 12 days instead. So you went from having 26 sick days to 12 sick days. I want to know what percent of change. First off, this is a percent decrease because you're going from a higher value to a lower value. All right, the formula says, and again, it's this formula right here. It says take the higher value minus the lower value. So that would be 20 minus 12. I'm supposed to divide that by what I started with. The initial amount given, that first amount is 20. So I'm going to divide by 20. And then you're supposed to multiply that by 100. So in other words, and you couldn't just enter in your calculator 20 minus 12 divided by 20 times 100, because it would end up doing division before subtraction. If you wanted to use your calculator for the whole thing, you need to wrap that in parentheses so it knows to do that first. So what you're really doing is taking 8, because 20 minus 12 is 8, divided by 20 times 100. And when you do that, you get 40. And it is a percent. You're calculating a percent of change. You just multiplied by 100 to make it a percent. So that would be a 40% decrease in the number of sick days that you get. So that's how you identify a percent of change, whether it's an increase or a decrease. High minus low, divided by original, multiply it by 100. Now sometimes you have to use this strategy to find a new amount. I'm just going to fold this paper in half really quickly so I have enough room. There we go. Okay, so this is a little bit different of a scenario, but I know you can do it. Finding a new amount. So most of the time, increases or decreases are expressed as a percent of your current amount. So for example, let's say you have 25% recording space left on your DVR. To calculate the new amount, or the amount that you have left, you have to find the percent of the amount given, and if it's a percent increase, you'll add it to the original amount. And if it's a percent decrease, you'll subtract it from the original amount. Maybe right now you're thinking, huh? What on earth are you talking about? Well, let's help these words to make sense. Let's say that you have a job and you make $40,000 a year. And you do such a great job that your boss says, you know what? I am going to give you a 1.5% raise. And that's usually how raises are expressed. If you're an employee that makes a salary, not an hourly wage, but you make a certain amount of money per year, you'll get a percent of that amount as a raise. So what we want to know is, we want to know how much money we're going to make a year then. So our first step here, what do you think the first step would be? You can pause and think about it if you want, or you can just wait for the answer and I'll say it. You know that's what's going to happen. But if you thought about it, don't we need to know what 1.5% of 40,000 is? That's kind of important, isn't it? So we're trying to figure out that new amount, right? And that new amount, doesn't that sound like A equals P times W to you? I hope so. So we're trying to figure out that new amount. We're trying to solve for A. It says 1.5%. That's the percent given. I have to divide it by 100 before I can plug it in. And this is the whole amount that you currently make. So that would be your W. So to figure out our new amount, all you need to do is take 1.5 divided by 100 and then multiply that by the whole amount that you were making before, which is 40,000. So when you do that, I'm going to do it really quickly in my calculator. You end up getting $600 for A. Now $600 is not your new salary. That would be terrible. Terrible to go from $40,000 a year to $600 a year. What that $600 is, that's the amount of money that you're getting as an increase to your current salary. So it says $40,000 increased by this. That means whatever the new amount is, we're going to add it to the original. So you were making $40,000. Now you're making another $600. So your new salary would be $40,600 per year instead. So you're getting a $600 raise. So that's what I mean by finding the new amount here. We have to figure out what our new salary is, but there's more than one step. We need to first know, okay, how much is it being increased or decreased by? That's where A equals P times W comes in. And then after that, if it's an increase, we add it to the original amount. If it's a decrease, we subtract it from it. All right, let's try a decrease one. All right, we have 250 ounces decreased by 20%. So let's say that a company currently has a giant size 250 ounce bottle and they want to make something a little bit smaller. They want to decrease it by 20%, so they need to know how many ounces is this new bottle going to be. All right, well first off, 20 ounces decreased by 20%. I need to know what I'm decreasing this by, right? So we have to figure out our A equals P times W. We're trying to find the new amount. So I know that this 20% is the P. I'm going to write divided by 100 underneath it. And this must be the W if we're looking for the A, if we're looking for a new amount. So all we need to do is take the percent as a decimal. 20 divided by 100 is going to be 0.20. Maybe you're thinking that, but 0.2 is the same thing. And we're multiplying that by what we started with. So the new amount here, you just take 2/10 or 20 hundredths, multiply it by 250, and we get 50. So this 50 is what we want to decrease that amount by. So decrease means subtract. So in order to figure out how many ounces, we take our starting amount and take away what it's being decreased by. Don't do 50 minus 250. You're going to get a negative number, and you can't really have a negative number of ounces in a bottle. That makes no sense. So 250 minus 50. Yes, the new bottle is going to have 200 ounces instead. And I'm sorry I connect my zeros weird like that, but it says 200, not 250, because that's what you started with. That's it. See you in class.